Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1987 direct-to-video crap fest that is Rotor. Now, before I get around to sharing my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Thomas for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Rotor, which is a pseudonym for Robotic Officer Tactical Operations Research, is a film that was shelved for a couple years after it was completed in 1985. And honestly, it should have stayed on the shelf. It's that kind of movie. It's directed by Cullen Blaine, who also wrote the film along with Bud Lewis. And Cullen Blaine was also the producer. And Cullen Blaine and Bud Lewis, they were art directors. They were guys who were like animation supervisors. Later on in their careers, they would go on to work on a ton of different cartoons that you actually probably remember, or work on art direction for films like I Come in Peace with Dolph Lundgren. They never really wrote or directed anything ever again after Rotor, and you could definitely see why. The direction in this is pretty bad. There are some moments where there's some establishing shots that are okay, but too much of the movie is establishing shots. So after a certain point, it just becomes not impressive at all. And when it comes to the direction of anything else, it looks like something you would see in a low budget commercial, or it really doesn't elevate itself from other crappy direct-to-video movies from around the same time period. Honestly, some of the best looking shots are like skyline shots of Dallas, Texas at night, and I honestly don't even think they were actually shot by the director. I think that there's some stock footage they got the rights to or bought from the local news network and just threw it in there. Because the way that it's shot is so much better than anything else in this movie, it's hard for me to believe that they actually shot that particular sequence, or the director was able to do that, or even had the capability to direct some skyline shots with that much effectiveness and efficiency. Most of the time, the direction is fairly inept, uh, just not really impressive. I mean, there's even a climactic fight scene that's shot in the background. Like, there's these two characters. One is Rotor and one is this other scientist lady, and they're fighting, and it's like in the background of the shot. A better director would not shoot the scene that way, wouldn't frame the scene that way, because they would be like, yeah, that's incompetent as hell, and that's really bad. This is the climactic final battle, and it's all happening in the background. Unless it's an intentional gag, it's really dumb to shoot the scene that way. And there's just a lot of scenes in this involving Rotor in particular that are just really weak, just don't really have a ton of energy or life to them. There's not a lot of style, there's not a lot of flair. It's just about as clunky as the Rotor cop himself. Now, as bad as the film's direction is, the script is arguably even worse by Cullen Blaine and Bud Lewis. I know that technically this did predate RoboCop by a couple years, but it still is massively inferior to RoboCop in so many different ways, regardless of the fact that it was first. And it's also a really pathetic ripoff of the Terminator. It starts out with a ridiculously long text scroll that explains what Rotor is, and then provides some exposition. Then afterwards, you hear a random radio broadcast with these annoying radio DJs. Then it cuts to this random ass couple who were driving in a car down a road, and you can tell that the dialogue was not recorded for this scene and it was just dubbed in post with ADR, and it's done really badly too. The voice actors here do not sound convincing in the slightest. They hear an explosion, they stop their car, they get out. There's this guy who then shows up with a mullet, and this is our lead, by the way. This is um, Police Captain Dr. Barrett C. Cold Iron. So, yeah, this guy is not only just a police captain, but he's also a scientist. He's a brilliant roboticist. I don't know how, I don't know why. He doesn't look like a guy who would pass a chemistry exam, let alone become a brilliant a scientist who created a robot cop. But okay, so this chicken wings Hauser looking guy, he has this woman and she's passed out or she's supposed to be dead, and he lies her down on the ground and he's all like burnt up and his plaid shirt is all torn to shreds. This random guy shows up in a camo hat with a shotgun and is pissed at Cold Iron because he shot a patrol cop. And then you just cut to this random scene where Cold Iron is now being interrogated by these people in this operations facility. And I'm like, what the hell happened with the guy in the camo hat? He was not happy and he had a shotgun pointed right in Cold Iron's face. But we never really hear from that guy again, and we don't know what happened with that guy. After the meeting in the operations facility, which took place at a particular time and on a particular day, which is something that the writers really put a lot of emphasis on in this script, to let you know the exact time of day and the exact day that certain things are happening in this script. It's almost to the point where they put more effort into making sure that the audience knew that it was a Monday or Wednesday or Monday evening at directly and exactly 5:30 in the afternoon or in the morning the next day than anything else. Okay, it's like you should get your priorities straight, writers. This isn't that important and vital to the script. After that scene in the operation facility, Cold Iron gets let go. Then we cut to a bunch of establishing shots of the Dallas skyline at night with more narration, but this time it's Cold Iron himself who's doing the narrating, and it's even more exposition. And it just sounds like he's repeating what you already saw in the text crawl in the beginning. Then after that, it cuts to Cold Iron on his farm with country music in the background. That's really hard to listen to because it sucks so much. And this is where you get just an overdose, an overabundance of establishing shots from the director. An establishing shot of the Dallas skyline, an establishing shot of Cold Iron's farm, establishing shot of Cold Iron's farmhouse, but this time up close. Then we go inside of Cold Iron's farmhouse, and now we have an establishing shot of his kitchen counter and an establishing shot of his coffee machine. and an establishing shot of his coffee mug that says Texas on it. Because, hey, just in case the audience forgot that this is a film that takes place in Texas, here we have a coffee mug to remind you of that fact. Then you cut to Cold Iron supposedly waking up from his alarm, and the direction is so inept here. It clearly shows the alarm clock switch from 4:59 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning. The next shot after that shows Cold Iron in bed waking up, and the clock says 4:50. What in the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, how inept and how bad do you have to be as a director to not notice that big of a fuck up? Now the audience thinks that 10 minutes have just gone missing. It's so inept, so easily avoidable. What in the hell? Are you fucking kidding me, man? Then you cut to another establishing shot, but this time it's the same shot of the farmhouse, but now we have to show Cold Iron get out of the farmhouse and take every single step to this fence where his horse is at, so we could set up a lame joke where the horse drinks the coffee and he eats the horse's carrots. This is like 10 or 15 minutes in. It feels like 30 or 40 minutes have gone by because nothing is happening and we have nothing but establishing shots, bad attempts at humor, bad ADR dubbing, and we still don't have a clue as to what in the fuck is even going on, despite all of the establishing attempts to establish a plot with the narration and the opening credits. Finally, we get some semblance of an idea of where things are going when we cut to the police station. And there's a police robot named Willard who can talk, who looks like Robbie the Robot's loser cousin. And he's like cracking jokes throughout the script, and he's like doing a fist bump with the janitor. He's hitting on the receptionist. Hey, baby, how about you give me your 7 digits? And the robot is easily one of the funniest characters in the entire script and one of the best characters in the entire script. And he's only in it for like 5 minutes. Most of the time, we're stuck with Chicken Wings Hauser and Cold Iron. And so Cold Iron sets up this meeting with these investors, I guess, for Rotor. And he shows footage of the Rotor endoskeleton. And it's the most pathetic, cheap ass looking stop motion effects you will ever see in your life. It's this shitty looking stop motion puppet of Rotor that looks like a dollar store version of the endoskeleton from the Terminator. And Cold Iron is talking about trying to hype it up, and he's like, it can do karate, and it has no need for tubes or wires or any of those things. And then it shows tubes. It's like it doesn't need tubes or wires or gears. And then it's got all these tubes. And it's like it's just doing this stupid look. It's just doing this stupid dance. It's basically like it's fucking Shields and Yarnell or some shit. It's doing a mime fucking show for the entire audience. It even does this. It even does this at one point. It's literally just miming. It's doing a lame mime show. The investors randomly keep mentioning Beach Boys albums or Beach Boys songs for some reason because the writers were just big Beach Boys fans to the point where like, oh, this has got good vibrations. I'm like, what in the hell? So apparently, though, the presentation was a success, but not enough for Cold Iron's boss, who is this guy who's pretty high up in the force or outside of it in some kind of political area, and he has this long-winded bitch fest at Cold Iron, basically telling him, "You better get Rotor up and online in 60 days." But sir, we won't really have a prototype working until 6 years from now. I don't care. Get that rotor up and running in 60 days, or it's your ass, and we're all gonna be in trouble for misappropriation of funds. And this is where you hear like some of the script's just most incredulous dialogue. And there's a lot of that in this script. They just stumbled upon lines that are just so random and so out of place and just so dumb that they happen to get a laugh. Like this. Let me tell you something, mister. You fire me, and I'll make more noise than two skeletons making love in a tin coffin, brother. There's just so many lines like that in this script. I think the writers just drunkenly stumbled upon some gold when it comes to some of these lines. Because everything else is so dumb and so bad about this script that I refuse to believe that were actually somewhat clever here. This whole thing is all set up where you got to get Rotor up and running in 60 days, but Cold Iron's like, fuck you, I quit. So then his assistant is now running the Rotor project. And you cut to this random Native American janitor guy who's messing around with this lady who looks like she's pouring urine into different containers. And he's talking about how, man, I'm either Indian or I'm a sissy. Look at these cheekbones. I'm just like, what? And he's trying to hit on this girl. She doesn't want anything to do with him. He puts his headphones somewhere. He tries to get them off later, but then he causes some kind of chain reaction or causes something to occur with an overload on electricity that just somehow conveniently wakes up Rotor. Rotor then wakes up later, and now is I guess he has a complete and total uh skin, complete with a mustache and everything. Looks like a random guy. And apparently, despite the fact that Rotor wasn't ready, the police station had a locker for him, complete with a jacket and a helmet, with a cheap 25-cent Harley Davidson sticker uh, on it. I cracked up when I saw that because I'm like, oh my god, I remember seeing that shit at like the laundromat when I was a kid. Like 25 cents, there's a quarter for the sticker. It's how cheap this movie is. They spent 50 cents on the decals on Rotor's helmet. Rotor also finds a motorcycle that has his name on it, and it's just behind some velvet rope. I'm like, oh wow. I mean, for a prototype or something that didn't even have a prototype yet, man, they sure were ready. It's a good thing too. Otherwise, Rotor, I don't know what he would have done. I guess he could have just taken a patrol car, but maybe they didn't have the budget for that. The first time you see Rotor, he's having a hard time opening a door. Like, wow, this is like the top of the line technology, and he's grunting when he's trying to open some double doors. He can't get around chairs. He's just walking through the chairs instead of going around them. There's this random police officer who's there who's trying to get him to sign out for his gear or some shit, and Rotor's not really being that cooperative and pushes him aside. And then the guy is like, "Hey, what's the matter with you, buddy? Got your pecker caught up in the plumbing this morning? I ought to jack you up. Spit and polish, academy snot. God save us all. So there's actually some lines in this that crack me up. This is still a bad movie though. It is still bottom of the barrel garbage. But there are some moments with the dialogue that admittedly made me chuckle, or some other moments that were just so inept and idiotic and dumb that you couldn't help but laugh. So Rotor is now online. And by the way, this is like 40 minutes into the movie. Half the film is already over and Rotor is now finally online. And you're thinking, okay, he's gonna go on a killing spree or some shit. No, that's not really what happens. Instead, we gotta keep going back to Cold Iron and him going to try to get charcoal briquettes for the steaks that his wife is gonna cook later. Even though he already went to dinner with his wife or lunch with his dinner. He already went to lunch with his wife at this restaurant earlier in the movie. But I guess now they're hungry again. And so he goes to this convenience store to try to get the briquettes, but assumes that there's a robbery going on and he just happens to be correct, even though he assaults a bunch of guys, tells this guy in a car to give him change for $1. If he does, then he'll give him a head start and he won't arrest him right away. But then the guy never gives him any change for $1. So I was like, what in the hell was even the point of that? He told him, hey, give me a change for $1 and then I'll let you get a head start and I won't arrest you. And then he never gives him the dollar. He never gets change for the dollar. And then the guy just drives off. He then assaults a guy who's on the phone. It just lucked out that that guy was a part of the crew that was trying to rob the place. Then this guy comes out of the convenience store with a hostage, who is the most disinterested looking hostage you'll ever see. The lady looks like she's thinking about, man, did I leave the stove on? Like, she doesn't even look like she's in any sort of danger. And then Cold Iron shoots the guy. After that, you cut to this random ass shot of this couple bickering in the car. It's this woman named Sony who is about to get married to this guy, and this guy is a total jerk who is giving her crap for wanting to work after they get married, and he's saying lines that make no sense. Like, he's trying to give her shit by saying something like, you look like you got both eyes coming out of the same hole. Huh? And eventually they decide to break up. He tries to force her out of the car. Rotor shows up and then shoots the guy. And then he starts chasing after Sony. A good chunk of the rest of the movie is just Sony being stalked by Rotor. Now, Rotor apparently also has this ability to uh see the future or go back in time with something called sensory recall. So he'll just look at something and then he'll be able to see what happened at that location previously. So he's that advanced, even though he's not even a prototype, but he also has a weakness to car horns for some reason, because that's real. He has a weakness to fucking car horns. Rotor is such a fucking pussy, he can't handle loud noises. I mean, come on now. Really? Loud noises is what hurts Rotor, because it's not just car horns. Because later on there's a guy who's like a mechanic and he's he puts up a boombox in front of Rotor and he freaks out and hits the boombox. So he can't handle loud noises of any kind. All you need to do to defeat Rotor is trick his ass and wind up sticking him into a heavy metal concert. Just put him in the front row and his head will explode. Rotor's going after this poor woman named Sony. Sony's asking for help. She eventually is able to get connected with Cold Iron, who then just sets this woman up to be bait for Rotor. Tells this woman to just keep driving, keep going as far as she can. I'm going to get to Rotor and I'm going to deactivate him. He then randomly makes a phone call to Houston from his car phone that is clearly a phone that you would find in your mom's kitchen back in the 80s or 90s. I swear my mom had the same phone with the cord and everything. And he's calling Houston, and then there's this random muscle lady shows up who apparently is the designer of Rotor. She's Dr. Corinne Steele. She's the designer of Rotor's robotic chassis. So he leaves her a message. He says, "Hey, we've never met, but I need your help because Rotor is on a rampage. Come meet me at the airport." Then you have Rotor getting in a confrontation at a diner, attacks this random guy who, for some reason, has beaver teeth, who's working the grill. He's trying to go after Sony, and he takes out these two guys who try to give him some crap. Sony once again escapes from him because Rotor can't see her even though she's right in front of his face, or he just is incapable of like being able to bend over and like grab her. Every time he tries to grab her, he just goes like this, and he can't like bend down and do it. And that's so stupid because Rotor, when you saw the endoskeleton footage earlier in the movie, he's like doing bending over backwards, doing the limbo, doing the splits. But when you actually see Rotor, he can't even bend over to grab anything. So Steele, the bodybuilder chick with the skunk hairdo, which looked like shit, it was really not a good look for her. She teams up with Cold Iron. They eventually wind up finding Rotor, who has cornered Sony, who's in a boat. After he randomly crashed his motorcycle, by the way, when he was trying to chase Sony, and then Sony ran into the woods. Cold Iron and Steel show up. They attack Rotor. That's where you have the bit where Steel and Rotor are fighting in the background in what is supposed to be a climactic battle. Steel rips open his chassis, but then gets electrocuted. Then Cold Iron uses some primer cord and ties up Rotor and then blows him up. I don't know how that worked because unless he's got magic powers to replicate a bunch of different ropes out of his ass, I don't know how the hell he managed to pull that one off. So Rotor gets blown up. Then we basically are caught up to what happened in the beginning of the movie. And you're thinking, okay, all right. Now Cold Iron's going to go back to his wife and they're going to have their steak dinner and have a laugh. But no, now we have this random ass fucking bit where Cold Iron gets shot in the back by that guy who was bitching at him over the phone earlier. And then you have this narration after that sounds like it's Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone. But really, it's just some guy supposedly narrating a letter that Cold Iron's son received when he was at college. And then you cut to Steel, who is apparently alive, but not really. Her body was just used as a template for Rotor 2. And then I'm like, yeah, no, you're not getting a fucking sequel. Like, what the hell? Why would you even think that you were ever even gonna get another one of these fucking pieces of shit? Piles of junk. And that's the end of Rotor. It's like, oh, they have another Rotor on the way, but they're gonna fix the brain function so it'll make it capable of mercy and make it so it's not as merciless and judgy and trying to be all like Judge Dredd and judge and execute so much. And of course, this was something that was created by Cold Iron's nephew. It wasn't his son; it was his nephew. Or might as well have been, by the way. Also, Cold Iron, when he gets shot in the back, you can tell that it's not the same actor. It's some other guy that they had wear a wig and they shot the guy in the back. This movie fucking sucks. I know that there's people who enjoy it as a so bad it's good kind of film, but not enough to this film for it to be that kind of movie for me. If you had more of Willard the wisecracking robot, then maybe you might have something, but he's underutilized. Instead, you're stuck with Chicken Wings Hauser, and he's not the kind of chicken wings that have the nice tasty barbecue sauce on them, and they're not fresh either. They're the ones that are straight out of the freezer and are freezer burn. Taste like shit. And speaking of Chicken Wings Hauser, might as well talk about the cast. Richard Gesswein, he's Chicken Wings Hauser, poor man's Wings Hauser, just not very charismatic, not a good actor at all. To quote Riff Tracks, he definitely did look like he had pulled his back before shooting, and he's just back problems the entire time. Jayne Smith plays Dr. Corin Steele, who has all the acting ability of your average muscle bound female bodybuilder, which is next to none. She honestly seems like she's related to uh, Sue Price from the Nemesis sequels. Seems like they share the same DNA. You have Carroll Brandon Baker, excuse me, who plays Rotor. The guy's about as intimidating as Ned Flanders if he was trying to be the Terminator. You got Michael Hunter is Bugler, the commander in the police department, who's the guy who is given a cold iron, a bunch of crap, and then shoots him at the end. Who, to quote Riff Tracks, he really does look like angry Dave Thomas from SCTV. You have Margaret Trigg, who plays Sony Garin, the woman who's being stalked by Rotor throughout half the film. Honestly, she's the best actor in this entire movie. She delivered a performance that was actually not that bad, considering what she was dealing with and the kind of movie that she was in. Uh, she seemed like she was too good for this. And she would go on to actually get some other roles and some stuff. She even got a big role on a TV show called Aliens in the Family or something like that. And I think it was like a ABC sitcom that was very short lived. But she has a very tragic life story. Her performance in this was anything but sad. It was actually pretty solid when it comes to low budget productions. A lot better than anyone else in this cast. But I do want to give credit to the guy who voiced Willard because he was fun. Definitely had some charm. The voiceovers though by Lauren Bivens, Georgiana Barry is Steele, just really awful, just atrocious ADR work by all of them. The cinematography by Glenn Rowland is a joke. The editing by Doug Bryan is not really very good. The music by David Adam Newman is mostly just what sounds like a bicycle horn repeated over and over again in the same uh, exact refrain of music that's recycled constantly. I hated this score. Like it did. It sounded like an annoying bicycle horn just over and over again most of the time. Just like, ugh. This movie's already bad enough. I don't need to have headache inducing music to add on top of that. The effects are laughable and bad. The the entire movie is just low grade crap. It is such a garbage, crappy production in more ways than one. And I didn't find it to be that entertaining, to be honest. Like I said, I was mostly bored by this movie for its 90 minutes because not really a whole lot of anything is happening. except long extended establishing shots, dialogue that drags on forever, bad country music, bad original music by the composer, and action sequences that do not provide any thrills. It's, in my opinion, something that definitely deserved all of the bad reviews that it's gotten and then some over the years. So I don't really know what else to say about Rotor, aka rotten, offensive, terrible, odious rectum. Because this movie is a stinking rotten asshole. Uh, Other than thanks for watching my rant on the film, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.